It is one thing to start strong. It's another thing to continue to keep up that pace. It's another thing then to close it out super strong. I can't find a fault with this class. I cannot find a fault with the recruiting process there at Texas A&M. It has been phenomenal for Texas A&M in finishing most likely with the number one class in all of college football, 25 signed to date, and there could be one huge fish to go. We got Andrew Hattersley on the line from Texas A&M's 247 site, Gig 'em 247. Andrew, busy man, how you doing today?
My goodness, yesterday was a little bit of a whole lot of craziness. You got to give them a lot of credit. A lot of those commits and targets, and I think that was a big storyline in this class. Have been talking about this since March and February and January when they first committed, and I think people kind of laughed at them at first. I think there were a lot of people who, at that point, Ohio State was up near the top, and I think a lot of people chuckled when A&M commits talked about finishing with the number one overall class, but they went to work and closed extremely strong. I don't know what word you could use to describe it, but just really impressive what they were able to do, and especially yesterday, really in a 2-hour span to pick up the flurry of commitments that they did. It was just a really impressive day overall.
Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media. We go nuts covering college football each and every day all over the place, and Andrew helps us out a whole bunch. So please like the video, share these videos out on social media. You enjoy the content, others will as well, and support Andrew's work over at Gig 'em 247 as well, and check out this number one class top to bottom. We'll hit the highlights here, and it comes down to what's happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. So can you kind of go through what they were able to reel in here and, that really sealed the deal?
Yeah, so you had targets that had really been on the radar for a couple days and a couple weeks, and then you had others that had been longer targets. So I guess, we'll kind of go through chronologically, starting early in the morning, about 7:10 yesterday. A&M landed Jake Johnson, the nation's number one tight end, and really reloads that room depending on what Jalen Weidemeyer decides to do. You now have the number one, the number four, and I believe got my rankings up here. The number 10 tight end in the class, so 1, 4, and 10 coming in, and that really resets that room and puts them in a strong position going forward. Jake Johnson's obviously a guy that can come in and compete early for playing time, and him and Donovan Green are really two exciting guys that kind of do different things. And Donovan Green's a really good blocker, especially in the run game. So I think that makes him a great fit with A&M. And then Jake Johnson's actually also the brother of Max Johnson, who has been connected to A&M as well. And Jimbo Fisher said yesterday that, they were definitely looking into the transfer portal for a quarterback to kind of reset that room and have three quarterbacks there. And then you kind of, had a lot of the signees letters of intent comes in, and then the afternoon rolled around, and A&M landed another big target. He's been a target for a while, and Anthony Lucas beat out Alabama for him. It was a really close race between Alabama and A&M, but coming out of the in-home visit last week, I heard a lot of confidence about where A&M stood for Lucas, but you can never really count out Alabama until the decision's in and the signature's in. Then you had just a little bit later Cam Dewberry, who's been a target for well over 2 years. A&M was one of the first schools to offer him. Beat out Texas and Oklahoma for him, and just a really important guy along the offensive line that had kind of gone through the ebbs and flows of a recruitment that, at one point earlier this summer, Ohio State generated a lot of buzz. Then Oklahoma generated a lot of buzz. Texas generated a lot of buzz lately. But A&M's a school that he's extremely comfortable at. He's been to a bunch of times and ultimately ended up on top. And that's a credit to just staying the course and building that relationship with him. And that relationship's really strong with Cam Dewberry, and then Enoch White. Boy, it just seems like A&M's really pulled such a haul along the defensive line, and Elijah Robinson did a great job on this one, kind of connecting with him, and he's an East Coast kid from Imhotep, and really good pass rusher. Another guy that was connected to Georgia, Ohio State. Some of those big programs. Alabama drew a lot of buzz with him at one point after that video came out of Nick Saban kind of explaining schemes and all that during a virtual visit. And then finished out with Marquise Groves Killebrew, flipped him from Georgia. He got hurt late in the season with a knee injury, so we'll have to see, whether he maybe needs a redshirt year to get healthy and all that. But really good corner that can flip his hips and quick and good in coverage and fights for the ball well in the air. So just a really good player overall and a great late addition. And then just equally as important was holding on to a guy like Smoke Bowie. And I mentioned this on our board over the weekend that A&M played this really smart to bring him in for his official visit this past weekend ahead of the early signing period, because you knew at some point Georgia was going to push for him. And the night before the early signing period, buzz started to pick up that, Kirby Smart was taking that one on personally. And I think it was really important that A&M was able to get him in this past weekend and kind of solidify those relationships. Ended up holding on to him, and he's a guy that could impact on both sides of the ball. And so I think that was a huge win to be able to hold on to him. And you knew that wasn't going to be easy, but to fight that battle and win in a tough state like that, to win recruiting battles, really impressive.
So Bowie listed as a safety, and you're thinking that he could be used on offense as well?
He could play corner. He could play wide receiver. Yeah. So depending on how the numbers shake out, could be a guy that could flip over to the other side of the ball. But he committed A&M as a cornerback, but certainly has the ability to play wide receiver if needed, and is a guy that could be a factor in the return game as well.
Folks, we got Andrew Hattersley here from Gig'em 247 Sports talking up Texas A&M and the #1 overall class in the country. 25 signed and one big guy left out there. And before we get to him, there's an overriding theme that I kept hearing in regards to the various battles. I kept hearing the same schools listed, and Texas A&M won more than their fair share, way more than their fair share. So when you go up against, I kept hearing Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those three in particular, and then you keep winning those battles. I don't know what they're telling these kids. I don't know what the approach has been. We talk, you and I, relationships all the time in regards to it not being just show them the fancy facilities and flash the championship ring. It's, you got to build relationships over time and build that trust.
Yeah, and Jimbo Fisher talked about this a little bit yesterday. He said if you're going to win battles for the top kids, it's not easy. It's not just like winning a game. It's not easy. Just like anything, it's not easy. He said it's taken a lot of time, a lot of hours on the phone, a lot of time away from their families. But you just put in those hours and put in that work and just kind of be relentless in a way. I mean, when you look at a guy like Anthony Stewart, that's a guy that they had to fight right down to the very end. And one of the things that A&M really sells is, and an appeal to a lot of these kids is they can be the first ones to come to A&M and potentially win a championship or compete for, very much put them on the radar to compete for championships for years to come. And then when you get them down for games like A&M did for the Alabama game, I think the A&M Alabama game certainly did play a huge factor, just showing recruits that they could beat a program like Alabama and they could be part of doing that in the future as well, and do it in a great environment with an extremely, extremely passionate fan base. Obviously there's the Aggie Network and and everything that comes with that. Once you graduate from A&M, you really have got just a network that you can rely on for the rest of your life, and that's something I always hear Jimbo Fisher bring up as well, is just the strong networks at A&M. And for a guy like Anthony Lucas, he was really looking for a school where he could play big time college football and obviously kind of have something like the Aggie Network going forward as well. So I think that was a big factor in his decision.
The one question I heard every coach that I heard a news conference or a specific interview yesterday or the last couple of days, I did not hear Jimbo Fisher's news conference, was asked about NIL. They all gave a fairly generic but pretty transparent, open answer that you have to be open and honest about it. You have to lay it out there. You have to have that discussion, and you have to be very, again, open, but also let the player know about the opportunities and what's going on. So, of course, Jimbo Fisher is not going to talk about any specific deals, but did he address NIL?
He did, and he said, in his opinion, he was a bit more maybe open about it. He said, NIL deals have probably been happening below board for quite a while, and now it's just happening above board in a lot of different programs, and he kind of feels like it leveled the playing field in terms of just recruiting in general. And obviously schools can't set up NIL deals or anything like that, but he said what you can do is you can show prospective recruits what deals have already taken place on campus. And the biggest thing is just to be able to show them if they're able to come, what sort of opportunities would be available at A&M. And that's been the biggest thing to be able to show is if you come here, you'll have a chance to earn these NIL deals. And that's just really the way he answered it.
Folks, if you check out the 247 sports list on the Texas A&M commitment and now signed letter of intent list of 25, keep this in mind. It's not like looking at the normal most teams out there. If you scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, you're probably going to still run into a top 100 player. So it is a deep, deep class. It's crazy. You said Jake Johnson. I was looking for him. I knew he's a top 100 player, and
Yeah.
he's down the list. It is a deep, deep class.
Deep in the trenches too, and I think that was one of the biggest things that Jimbo Fisher talked about. You win in the trenches in this league, and you can never have enough of those guys. So they were going for every defensive lineman they can possibly go for.
All right, Andrew, I got a name for you. Evan Stewart.
Yeah, that was a name brought up quite a bit on our board. And listen, it's a weird deal. He's the only guy that did not sign his letter of intent on Wednesday. Talking to people around College Station, they still feel certainly absolutely confident that his letter of intent is going to come in probably today. No real reason as to why, and I don't think they were really stressed about it. But I know a lot of A&M fans are not going to rest easy until his letter of intent is in and signed. And he was on Instagram Live with a couple in A&M commits after the day talking about what they were going to do in practice and going against each other in practice. And so I don't think there's a huge concern, but obviously A&M would love to get it in the next day or so and get that all finalized. He's the only one that's left to sign his letter of intent. And so that'll be a guy A&M certainly is in communication with, but they also haven't pushed him. They've just kind of let him work on his timeline, and when he sends it in is when he'll send it in.
Stewart's the second-ranked wide receiver in the country. So
yeah.
Nolan's number 1 at his position. Brownlow Dindy's at number 4. Weigman at 2. Is it Eric Nye White? I'm sorry, number 3. Lucas 7. Anderson 7. Marshall 7. Salia 10. Bowie 8. Williams 9. As you mentioned, Jake Johnson coming in yesterday as the number 1 tight end in the country. Dewberry 3. and I don't want to shortchange anybody else because the top 10 at that position is just endless.
Yeah, and Dindy's a guy that one we hadn't talked about, but that was just kind of a being in the right place and again going back to those relationships we talked about. He was pretty solid to Oklahoma, where his parents graduated from, and his dad is gonna start working in College Station in January. But even despite that, he was still very solidly committed to Oklahoma. And then Lincoln Riley leaves, and the door kind of cracked open just ever so slightly for A&M to get in there, and did their in-home visit with him, and obviously preached stability and preached, and that's, I think, one of the impressive things we haven't talked about yet is, A&M lost their defensive coordinator on Friday to a head coaching position and still was able to close with this sort of class. And and it's because of the stability at the head coaching position around the rest of the coaching staff. And, that's a guy that, Dindy really took note of that and wanted to join.
So do we expect with Stewart done, no more, signed, sealed, delivered, all closed out for the rest of the year, including February, or is there room for more?
He's an early enrollee, so I'd expect him, to have his paperwork done probably um, in the next 2 days to be able to enroll in January, and then A&M goes to work on some other guys. That's the remarkable thing, is they've still got a couple major targets still left on the board. Beginning with 5-star quarterback Denver Harris. I think A&M is probably top 2 for him, along with Texas. LSU's still trying to get in there, but losing Corey Raymond really hurt on that front. And he's supposed to announce his decision probably this weekend. Just needed a couple more days on it. And so right now he is planning to sign on Friday. He confirmed yesterday with a TV station in Houston. And then he plays for a state championship game on Saturday, and will announce his decision after that game's done. Him and North Shore and Duncanville will square off on Saturday afternoon. And then Harold Perkins, a 5-star linebacker out of Cy Park, has been another huge target for him. He will announce his decision on January 2nd, I believe, at the Under Armour All-America game. Really, A&M, LSU, and Texas are the schools still in the mix there for him. And then you've got Shamar Stewart, who another 5-star defensive lineman out of Monsignor. You're seeing a pattern here. Monsignor Pace in Miami. I think that one's going to be a little bit more of a battle right now that Mario Cristobal's in place, and Mario Cristobal's already gone right to work on that one. He went his first couple of days on the job, and I think was a little worried about whether Stewart would maybe opt to go ahead and commit and sign with A&M this Wednesday. So he went for his in-home visit last week. Sounds like it was a success that, he opted to wait until February. And so we'll see where that one ends up. That would obviously be just the cherry on top of an incredible class on the D line. And then A&M will probably look in the portal for an offensive lineman. They probably need to add an offensive tackle. That would probably be the one concern if you spoke to folks. Losing out on Calvin Banks over the weekend to Texas, not being able to land Miles Frazier, transfer offensive lineman. They probably need to find an offensive tackle just to provide some depth at that position. But that's really, the big targets remaining, and still a chance to close out extremely strong.
Number 1 class in the country, and you just named 3 more top 5 players at their position that could sign with Texas A&M. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean that's the incredible part, is they've still got guys out there that especially looking at all 3 of those guys in Denver Harris and Harold Perkins and Shamar Stewart. I mean, they're very much top 2, top 3 for both of them, for all 3 of them. And so It's a matter of closing those out, and this class will really go to historic levels.
Andrew Hattersley on the line from Gig'em 247, breaking down the Aggies for us. We always appreciate Andrew stopping by, setting us straight on Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher's exploits on the recruiting trail in particular, but the entire story at Texas A&M, which includes, as you mentioned, Mike Elko moving on to Duke as the head coach. What are the plans for the bowl game? And has there been some sort of list of candidates that have been bantied around to replace him?
Yeah. So first of all, good for Mike Elko. He's a guy that I think you kind of saw the outpouring of support after he left for the job. He was a really well liked guy around A&M and College Station, and certainly deserving of that opportunity. It was he had been rumored for a couple of years, and so I think around College Station it was certainly an expectation at some point he would leave for a job. Head coaching job. Tyler Santucci will call the bowl game. He's the linebackers coach, and Jimbo Fisher actually mentioned yesterday that he had certainly the potential to be a co-defensive coordinator, and that another hire would be coming at some point. And so there's guys that have been tossed around, like Derek Mason at Auburn, Will Muschamp at Georgia, are two guys that have a connection to Jimbo Fisher from the past. But we'll see. And Jimbo Fisher said it should be something that's announced relatively soon. Didn't give a timeline for it, but the plan for the bowl game is for Tyler Santucci to call plays.
All right, Andrew, we appreciate you stopping by, laying down some serious work for us here. And you still have a few 5 stars to track and report on over the next couple days. We'll get together some point if I can get you back in here to talk about the bowl game.
Yep, for sure. Thanks, Mark.